This is how I learned Arabic. It took me about 4 years to actually get a great grasp, but the beginning was about 2 years, like for me to be able to get on a standing ground. So, first, of course, I became a Muslim. I became a Muslim, I was like 26 or 25. I became a Muslim and started learning the letters of the Arabic alphabet right away. Because, of course, that's something, if I want to learn how to read Quran, I had to do that. So I started learning that, plugging away in the kutab with little kids around me. And then after that, learning some of the huruf al-jar and whatnot. And I got a little bit stuck when I was in the US because there's not really much going on as far as classes go. I was like in Seattle, SeaTac area, and that's not really a place for learning the deen in a great way. So I tried to get involved learning the Medina books, and after a short period of time, I realized I was going very slow, and I also wasn't getting much from it because I was just doing like maybe an hour every weekend, and this is very slow. So I ended up going online and started learning a little bit from online, and then at a certain point, I realized like that I'm going to go study, and I need to go study and learn ilm. So I ended up talking to a brother that was in Egypt and asked him about, like, I was thinking about going to Azhar and whatnot to study. So he told me, he's like, before you go, you should go study the Medina books. And he's like, study the Medina books with I think it's like the Pakistani guy online. Maybe he is Indian, but he's got it all recorded and whatnot. Go study it, and when you're finished with that, or if you've done a lot of that, that will help you out once you get into Egypt to study. I wish I would have taken his advice because I started up with some of it and I kind of got a little backtracked because I wasn't plugging away at it as I should have been. Of course, in the West, sometimes it's hard to focus on these things. But what I did have and what I used at the beginning was I had an app that's called Quranic. And this Quranic app, it has a lot of the basic mufradat of the Quran that repeat themselves a lot. So just by it's like a flashcard based app, also with some kind of like lessons and whatnot that help teach you new words from the Quran and whatnot, and you kind of choose the word what it is like out of multiple choice. And then actually helped me a lot with the flashcard based repetition for me to learn the huruf al-jar, also a lot of the basic words that are in the Quran that repeat a lot. So this was a super helpful app that helped me with that basic foundation, not necessarily a full foundation, but before coming to Egypt. Then I ended up coming to Egypt, and that's where it really started. As soon as I got to Egypt, I was forced to communicate with the people around me. And of course, none of them really know English, so I'm going to have to communicate with something. So I was forced to use whatever little words I know to try to get my point across, and this is great. And this is what learning overseas is going to be great for every individual that really wants to learn, because it'll force them to bring out whatever they have, whatever you got inside of you. You got to bring it out and use it. And then, very shortly after this, I got involved with some of the Markaz. I looked around, I looked at some of them, and I had heard about Markaz Fajr before coming. And so once I got here, I went to a couple different ones, and Markaz Fajr seemed to be the best option for me at that time. And I just went through with it, and I started up there. And I started up in Tamhidi, which is the base level. It's like the bare bones, and they get you a little phone, and they have a picture of an apple on it, and they say tufah, and everyone says tufah, and then he gets another picture of a watermelon batir, and everyone goes around saying everything. And you eventually are forced to speak in front of the class while you're there, and they go through the Beni Yadayk, Al-Arabiya Beni Yadayk, and they go through these books. So I was there, and that's where I started up my real Arabic learning. And I started that up, and I went through the first book and then the second book, and I felt like it was going slow. So I took like an intensive course. So I took a couple levels and one level. So instead of going 8 weeks, I took 4 weeks. I took 8 weeks and 4 weeks. So I was like I think it was like 4 hours a day of studying there, which was a little intensive, but at the same time, I felt like I was actually starting to get somewhere. And of course, alongside of this, I also was picking up Quran and reciting Quran with Tajwīd, learning Tajwīd in Markaz al-Sarawi. It's a very famous Markaz here in Egypt. And so I was going from Markaz Fajr to Markaz Ma'asrawi, and just I would walk from one to the other, and I just kind of set up my schedule where I was able to do all of these. Like I think Ma'asrawi is like 3 times a week, so it'd give me some time to review, and then I'd go there and then recite on them. And so this is also important that anyone who's learning Arabic, you should be learning Quran. It doesn't mean that you have to focus every single bit of your time on Quran and only Arabic, but it is something that's important, and this is a part of learning Arabic. Like learning the Quran is one of the best ways you can solidify whatever you've learned in Arabic. And so I went through this after I got through like I think it was like the fifth level. COVID hit here in Egypt. It was like 2020. So I got stuck with their online courses, and nobody figured out how to use Zoom yet. Nobody understood how to do like the video conferencing. So it was difficult. It was difficult. So I ended up I finished out the class that I'd already started, and then I was like, okay, I'm not gonna keep going with them right now until something happens, something else. Also, I had some friends that talked about they had a private teacher, so that was something that was running around in my mind. And I ended up during this time, it was like this was Ramadan, so I went through all of the Medina books in Ramadan after I'd already been through some of the Bani Yadayk books. And this after I went through all the Medina books with, I think I was just binge watching the lessons and following it along, and then stopping it to do some of the exercises, and then also like reading like the text, whatever the new the conversation is or whatever. I would read that and go through it and try to make sure I got the tashkil properly. And for whatever reason, I didn't get the book that had the tashkil in it. I was doing the old books that don't have any tashkil, which is kind of hard. The Medina books without tashkil is a little bit hard. And Bani Yadayk has all the tashkil, so that made it easy. So I went through this, and then once I finished, I went back to, I resumed after a little bit with with Markaz Fajr, did one more level. I think it was like one more level. I got up to like level 7, I think was the end where I stopped. And then I was just like, these people were at a lower level because I'd done the Medina books, I already finished it. And I didn't want to waste my time with like a bunch of other people, and some of them are kids, like some of them are like young people, and I'm like almost 30 at that time. So like spending times with like 15-year-olds that are still somewhat immature, it didn't feel like the best use of my time. So, and I started learning other things as well at this time, and I was just starting to be able to understand when people are talking. And this is the best point. The best point is once you start to understand when people are talking, then you can actually take lessons in other than Arabic, and you're learning Arabic while you're listening to the lessons. So I remember I would get like the Ṣarf of Arba'in al-Nawawi, Ibn Uthaymin. So I had the Ṣarf in front of me, and I would be reading while he is talking. Of course, it's not always perfect. Like sometimes there's little bits of gaps of here and there from the actual lecture to what is written down, but a lot of it's the same. And I was benefiting from this way of seeing, okay, this is how I read it without tashkil, and this is how I understand what he's saying, and hearing how he says it. And then by this point, I started listening to a lot of Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin's lectures, and this, I'm starting to listening to lectures really put everything in a great place. Fast forward, I started, at this point, I got my private teacher, and I went through the Bani Yadayk books, finished them, and also I had gone through and got married to an Egyptian, which this is a great thing for your Arabic, because if you're forced to explain yourself to your wife in a language she understands, this is great. This is a great situation, because now everything that you've ever learned, you got to put it to use, and that's something that even now I mostly conversate in Arabic with my family, although like with my kids, I'll talk with them in English just so they get English, otherwise they won't get anything. But having to speak Arabic with your wife and whatnot, this is a great way to actually practice what I've learned. And then also getting your nose in the books and start reading. And once you get to a point where you're able to understand about 70-80%, everything else after that is easy. And then at this point, I got into I was getting into the Nahw books, reading them by myself first, and then going over them with a teacher. If the teacher was slow, I'd finish the book myself, and then I would finish it off with him. And if there was any challenging parts, I could always find, like sometimes if I was going through it with a teacher, I would read it through myself, and then if there was a challenging part, such as like Bab al-Tanazur, like what am I supposed to understand of this? So I would go over to lectures online, go over that, and then I'd finish it off with my teacher afterwards. Of course, this is a short video because I actually went through a lot more than this. But this is pretty much the beginning of studying the ulum al-sharia. And then once you get into this, every single thing you're studying is Arabic.